Who here likes science? Oh no, I think I got that wrong. Who loves science? Still wrong, still wrong. Who fucking loves science? Come on, okay. Tonight, welcome to the Memes, Blogs and Videos event. Hopefully tonight, I think, will be one of the most interesting nights looking at social media and science communication that we've ever seen in ANU, possibly ever in Australia. So please give a large round of applause for our panelists tonight. We have a lovely collection here for you. I'm going to read names because, otherwise I'll forget names there. I know your name, Chris. No, but I'm going to go from Dr. Phil Plate up there, known as Bad Astronomer. Please give him a round of applause. Destin Sanderland from the YouTube channel Smarter Every Day. Henry Reich, creator of the YouTube channels Minute Physics and Minute Earth. Mitchell Moffat, co-creator of the YouTube channel ASAP Science. Greg Banham. Greg Brown from, please tell me again. Co-creator, there, no wonder. That's why we got the chairs wrong. There you go, problem solved now. Elise Andrew from I Fucking Love Science. And Chris Casella, manager of Science Alert. I'm personally very excited about tonight's event. My name is Will Grant. I'm from the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science here at ANU. We teach science communication. We teach at the undergraduate level, at the postgraduate level. We have a Master of Science Communication outreach program, which is the Science Circus, which is a famous program in science communication where students tour around the country doing science shows and helping Australian school students to get enthused about science. One of the things that we teach in this program is how to use the web, how to use social media, how to really nail your social media presence and get science out there throughout the world. And I don't think there is a better panel in the world than we could have today to look at how to use the web, to use social media to communicate science. So we're going to go through tonight and look at the work that these people have been doing and the work that you all can do, that everyone can do, to take science out there into the web. Before we begin, I'd just like to just mark two things. This is the formal beginning to National Science Week, a week-long celebration of science that will see more than 1,000 events taking place across Australia. I encourage everyone to visit the National Science Week website and take a look at all the other events taking place next week. Tonight's event also falls on International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. And welcoming our international guests, I'd just like to say, as always, we acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respects to the elders of the Ngunnawal people, past and present. And I'd also finally just like to acknowledge our partners who have helped make this event possible, including National Science Week, who I mentioned before, the ANU Colleges of Science, the ARC Centre for Excellence for All-Sky Astrophysics, CASTRO, whose director, Brian Gainsler, is somewhere there. And joining us this evening, as I mentioned before, Science Alert, who have made this event possible. What we're going to be doing tonight is looking through some of the work that these people have been doing in communicating their science using the web. We'll go through a couple of their leading examples and get them to talk about how they go about doing their science communication. Then we'll have a panel discussion and then open up to questions from you. So we'll start tonight with Dr. Phil Plate, or, I know, wrong end of the table, but...
God, what advice am I going to give here? I have no idea how to use the web compared to these guys.
Well, do you have some examples that we could look at first of all?
Okay.
If you'd just like to talk to, what is your process of communicating science using the web?
Well, I like to scare the hell out of people if I can. In this case, using something that I know people are interested in already. For example, disasters. So people like disasters. There are disaster movies all the time. They do quite well. And I'm fascinated by them. People like scary stuff. You go on roller coasters. You watch horror movies. And I studied exploding stars, supernovae, for my PhD. Supernova 1987A, in fact. I couldn't see it from the Northern Hemisphere. I hope some of you down here actually got a chance to look at it with your own eyes. But that stuff fascinates me, so why not combine them? Talk about different astronomical events that can destroy the Earth. And I wrote the book on it.
What's your favorite destruction of the Earth scenario?
Oh, all of them.
Oh, come on.
In fact, it's the end of the universe itself, which was the only chapter of the book that I wrote that actually really depressed me. Everything else was kind of fun, but that one was like, oh, this is awful, and the idea that maybe we're existing in a strange state that can collapse down to it's like standing on the second to last step on a staircase and going down to the last step, and the universe itself is sort of in an energy state that's on that second to last step. It may take that last step down. It's very complicated, but the bottom line is that if this happens, it'll basically erase all of space and time, such that not only will the universe no longer exist, it never will have existed because time will go away. And it's like right out of Doctor Who.
Kind of makes pretty much everything pointless, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just let's all go home. I'm just going to go and cry into my pillow now. We're all dead. That's done. Okay, how does that communicate science, though? I mean, making people really scared.
Well, in this case, you talk about asteroid impact, you talk about the sun having magnetic storms, black holes, exploding stars, and there are a couple of different kinds of exploding stars, galaxy collisions. These are all real scientific topics. So I'm not just making this stuff up. It's based on solid science. And so by saying, hey, can a nearby star exploding hurt the Earth? Well, it turns out it depends on what kind of star. Depends on how far away it is. It depends on a lot of things, and these are all scientific topics. So using the idea of disaster is just simply a hook to get people interested, and then I'm sneaking sort of the science in sideways there, and it's tricky, but it works.
So your writing process, you're writing for Scientific American now.
Slate.com. Yeah.
My apologies. So your writing process, you'd be looking from the emotional hook first, or would you be more interested in the science that you want to communicate?
I get a lot of press releases. I'm on a lot of mailing lists for astronomical societies and things like that. And a lot of the times the news is something that's maybe interesting. Sometimes it's just something that happened. What I try to do when I'm reading it, I figure, look, Universe Today, Scientific American, all these different groups, they're going to be writing about this as well. What do I have to say about it that's different? Why would somebody read what I have to say as opposed to everything else? Well, I'm an astronomer, and I have a long history of doing astronomy, so why not try to find the person who did it? I know a salacious story about them. Or the science, there's something that maybe they didn't report about that's actually really cool. Here's a picture of a gorgeous galaxy. Well, yeah, but what's interesting about this galaxy they didn't say is whatever. So I try to find something different. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Tell us about it.
But I try to find something different to talk about. It also helps if somebody who's a famous web cartoonist draws pictures of you in his strip. That's from Zach Wiener's Saturday morning breakfast cereal. And if you don't read that, you should. And every now and again, I'll wake up and get a surprise and find myself drawn into the comic.
But
Zach's an old friend.
You've obviously made an impact on him with your stuff, and then it's going out virally via his cartooning as well.
Right. I mean, Zach is beloved. I mean, SMBC is a huge webcomic. XKCD, apparently having four-letter acronyms is very popular. The Oatmeal. These are huge webcomics, and the people who do them love science. And so they're hitting more people than I could ever dream to get. So it's fantastic when they do sort of scientific jokes. That's part of a much longer panel that was quite funny. That not a particularly funny drawing, but there you go. It's just cool because, hey, that's me with less hair. Awesome.
But to steal from the marketers, this is actually something really good going on, that you're getting your science to people that these cartoonists are interested in the science, but then they're getting it out to a much wider audience again.
Absolutely. It's like a catalyst or something that starts a bigger fire. If I can get something out there to the right people, and I don't mean like the right people, but I mean just to certain people who have a much larger leverage, a much wider reach than I do, then I get huge value added, all these terrible hyphenated advertisement type of words. But in fact, it's true. It's you can write, and if nobody's reading it, what good is it? And if you can get it to somebody who then immediately distributes it to 1 million people, or say 6 million people, then that's a huge advantage.
Okay, speaking of 6 million people, I think that, well, okay, it's Elise, is there a country? Does anyone know a country that has 6.4 million people? There must be a comparator country there. You're probably growing a fair bit faster. Elise Andrews from I Fucking Love Science has an enormous Facebook reach, an enormous reach on the web in general, something that everyone else would just dream of. Elise, how does it happen?
This one works.
Hello? 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 Oh yeah, hi. I have no idea how that happens. For me, a friend suggests you start a Facebook page and you do it, and then a year later there are 6.5 million people following you. I still have no idea how that happened, and people keep asking me all these questions and expecting me to be some sort of social media guru. I have no clue. Sorry.
What's your day to day then? What do you think then? Okay, I'll get up and I'll post something that'll get 40,000 likes, or what do you do? What do you do that hits that sweet spot just magically?
There isn't a really magic thing. I mean, I probably read 10 to 15 papers a day, more than probably 30 news articles. I read magazines. I'm reading constantly. I'm constantly looking for things, and then it's just about curating that and going through it all and deciding what will be the hitters for people. And I don't really have much of a process for doing that. It's kind of looking at what gets me excited. And if something sort of sparks that in me, if it gets me going, wow, I fucking love science. If it gets me saying that, then I kind of figure it's going to do the same for other people, and it's worked so far.
So what are the sweet spot things? Things that make people laugh. Things that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to vary it up a little bit. People like jokes. People like bad jokes. But people like a lot of things, and that's, I think, is what's great about Ifless, is I really try and keep it as broad as possible, and I make sure there's something in there for everyone. Like, there will be a really silly joke, but then the next post will be something very serious. So you never know what you're going to get. It's something different minute to minute.
So, just on your name, while you've got, has the name been something that has really worked for you, or is it something that embarrasses your grandmother?
I think so,
or?
yeah. I don't think it embarrasses my family exactly. I know my mum calls it Ifless when she's boasting about me to her friends and just hopes they don't ask what it stands for. It's definitely been a big draw. I mean, I think the name has been very beneficial in terms of you can't not look at it. You know, when you're scrolling past something on your Facebook feed, you might not always look at where it's come from. You might laugh at the joke, or you might read the article, but you might not. Most people, I don't know about everybody else, wouldn't necessarily go back and look at the page where it came from. But a name like I Fucking Love Science, you can't not look at. That kind of punches you in the face. You've got to go and look at that.
And I think for a group of people here that we all do, we do love science, and that affirmation, I really do.
It's very enthusiastic. And it's very excited, and there's no other word in the English language that conveys that much enthusiasm.
I think you could take that straight to... No, there isn't. Absolutely. But that's something that we do teach, in science communication. Getting enthusiasm in there, really showing I am so enthusiastic for the scientific process. I know that sounds really nerdy, but, I am.
Maybe you should start a Facebook page called that.
I am so enthusiastic for the scientific process. I think there's a word character limit. I don't know if you can actually tweet that. It's too long to tweet. Thanks for that, Elise. Okay, we'll move on now to Henry Reich. Henry Reich, as I said before, is the creator of the YouTube channels Minute Physics and now Minute Earth. Again, he has 1.7 million subscribers on YouTube and 500,000 for Minute Earth.
Something like that.
Something like that. Tell us about the process.
So, I mean, I think in the year or so since I've made that video, I can see a lot of ways to improve it.
It's always hard looking at old stuff.
That's part of the process, is to never be satisfied with what I've done and try to always make things better. I like to try to answer a lot of questions that people may have and that aren't often answered, in school physics classes, for example. And when you take physics in high school or in college, you often end up doing lots of stuff about, if I pull a pulley this hard and how, if the lever is moving in a certain way. Like, it's all this classical, boring physics that you look at and say, what does this have to do with, anything I'm going to see in my everyday life, or, why is it interesting? What people are actually studying most of the time when they do physics these days are really interesting things like, what happens at the beginning of the universe, or at the end of the universe, or in black holes, or exploding stars, and a lot of really awesome stuff that you don't hear about as often. And so I try to bring some of that into the public awareness. And of course, plenty of people are talking about those sorts of things as well. But I try to also take take things that are potentially really complicated and explain them in a way that hopefully is honest to the science. I have a physics background, so I can't stand when the explanation kind of glosses over the most important details. You know, you throw the baby out with bathwater, and suddenly, what's the point of talking about it in the first place?
So what is the trick for that? I mean, that's something that all science communicators grapple with. How do you deal with this really complicated process, phenomenon, whatever it is, and how do you get rid of enough details and still make it clear for people?
I mean, I think for me the trick is that I really have to come to an understanding myself of the topic. And a lot of people will say, like, you don't understand something until you teach it. And so really you have to really know something. And part of the reason I do physics is because I know about physics. But often, you know, if I'm working on a video, like the Nobel Prize is announced, and I have to go in that morning, I'll read the papers from the winners and try to figure out, to learn what they did, because I don't know anything about the field that they were working in, and then figure out what is it that is the most kind of interesting and crucial aspects that if you threw that out, you wouldn't have why their work was important anymore. And that's really the kernel. And I don't know how to like go about doing that. You just kind of have to have some sort of, you know, you have to have taste. I think a lot of people talk about it with art in general. The idea is that if you have an opinion about things, then you can at least say, I like this thing, I don't like that thing. Now, if I can use that same idea on my own work, then you can make things better in your kind of version of better.
And how do you go with cramming a Nobel Prize into 1 minute? I mean, I read the Nobel Prize announcements, and some of them break my brain.
Well, the secret is that they're actually 2 or 3 minutes. But no, that's really hard, and that's why it takes me such a long time to make. It's much easier to make, you know, to do a 10-minute talk or a 10-minute video than it is to make a 1 minute.
Are you saying that didn't take 1 minute to make?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts, but it's part of the exercise of figuring out what is most important, is making it short. And if you make something that's longer, it's often much easier to get lost in details, and it's more confusing for the audience and also for you. So it's all kind of tied in together. Making something that's short and to the point helps you understand what is most important. Because if you only have a minute, you better be talking about the right thing.
Mm. I just want to ask one thing. How do you think about your audience? I mean, your videos are it's stick figures and stick cats. How are you imagining your audience? Who are your audience, and who are you talking to?
I try to reach as broad an audience as possible. The reason for the stick figures and stick cats is I think it's both I can't draw anything else, but also it's not intimidating in the way that a lot of the kind of standard television science programs have, like fancy Hollywood special effects and dramatic explosions and flying through galaxies and all this crazy stuff that, while it's beautiful, it can also be really, really intimidating, because you're taking a really complicated subject and then saying, here, let's make it look really complicated. How is the audience ever going to buy into the fact that they might be able to understand it? Whereas if you take a really, really complicated subject and say, here's a stick figure representing this thing, people have this idea that they might actually be able to understand it, which I think if you don't start with that, people don't start with some faith that they could understand something, they're never gonna put in the effort to understand it.
Yeah, I think that's a really fascinating point, that we've all seen the amazing high-end Hollywood visualizations of science that sometimes are used to show that you can't participate, whereas your stuff is very open and participatory.
Yeah, no. So that's what I love about simple drawings, is that in some ways it's like I'm maybe sitting next to you, writing on the back of an envelope, just explaining something as we're chatting, rather than like this having a big barrier and here I am behind millions of dollars of special effects and studio productions. Now I do the best darn stick figures I can.
I'm not. They were great stick figures, beautiful.
But so that's the whole idea of having standards. Like I do within like my drawing capacity, I do the best job I can. But I'm aware that I'm not going to be able to do anything beyond stick figures and stick cats.
I might come to that later.
Occasionally expand to stick penguins and things like that. So.
All right. In continuing in the same vein of very open sorts of communication, that is using probably a lot of the things that you're talking about as well, Henry, and trying to represent as clearly as possible what's going on. We'll go to the gents from ASAP Science. Tell us, what's your process of going into communicating that science?
I think there's a couple of things, and I think there's like a theme here of finding an experience that people already have or think about. And for us, it's less about when you go to school, you really get the details first, and they say, like, this is what cell division is, and let's go through the steps of the process of how your cell divides and how your genes work. But for us, it's often, let's start on the other end. Let's start on something you already experienced. What is aging? Why do we age? And then instead sneak in the details there. Or, you know, we get hungover. Why do we get hungover? And put in the steps about how alcohol affects your blood and how that affects the cells in your body. So for us, it's thinking about that experience that people already have, and clearly it is for a lot of us, finding that experience in the daily life that everyone can relate to, and then taking it from there and kind of sneaking in. It's like learning without knowing you're learning.
Yeah, and I was a teacher last year, and I realized a lot of the time what would happen when you're trying to engage students is that there was this curriculum, this looming curriculum that you're always focusing on, and you're forgetting about the creative things and how you could actually engage the students properly. So we think about that a lot. We think, what have they experienced? What are they interested in? Okay, we've got that. Now let's get the science behind it and hook them in sort of through that way.
So very much instead of starting with the facts, starting with a human experience.
Exactly.
So when you're thinking about your next video, you're not going from a journal article or from something like that. You're thinking, okay, what's a real human experience that I want to try and find the science out, or trying to help the scientific explanation? You start from there?
It can be either. I mean, we get tons of suggestions from people on like questions that are really burning for them. But I mean, having gone through like high school, and then you get to university science and you realize like it gets even cooler and it gets so much more interesting. And so from our perspective, it's that we were lucky enough to see those journal articles and be really interested and be really intrigued, and then try and take those and explain those to our friends in a way that related to them. So for us, it often can still start on some groundbreaking research or a journal article or something like that. But then it's the challenge of, okay, like what is the experience here that everyone feels? Like how does this relate to everyday life? Because everyone goes through their daily life, and we're all interested in these things, but not everyone can spend their life, you know, researching in a lab or going into one field and spending their whole life devoted to that. So our job is to make it accessible for people who want to spend 5 days of their, or 5 minutes of their day rather, just to sort of casually be interested in this topic. And so yeah.
Just if you could talk a little bit about the visuals that you go for, because you're going for this same sort of really clear and engaging sort of stuff, but you know it's not high-end Hollywood. Is this?
The explanation that you had was really interesting, because it's true. We wanted to make sure that it was something that we could get our point across very clearly. And so we find that the way that we do it is like the best way to do it. In fact, we are using drawing. But I think what's good is that we do try and make sure that the visuals sort of are kinetic and move around. We're starting to experiment with that more recently, trying to like in no way make an explosion or make anything, you know, we're never going to include that, but we're trying to figure out how to maybe make it so that we can expand a bit more into other fields. But yeah, it definitely is simple is good.
Yeah, and there's different variations on what you can do. I'm kind of losing my train of thought here.
Yeah, sorry, he was talking about like the simplicity.
Oh yeah, I think for us a big choice at the beginning was just how do you strip your personality from this, but keep your personality in it, right? And I think there are some people in this room who do an amazing job being in front of the camera, right? Like Destin is a perfect example. But for us, it was how congratulations. For us, it was, you know, how do we make it just about the topic? You know, because sometimes when a person's in it, you can start, you know, there's the variables of, you know, does my audience like me? Would they rather someone else in this video? For us, you know, when that video gets shared, it's really just about aging, or it's just about the topic at hand and less about the person behind it. And so I thought that was a nice way to kind of make it more accessible to more people.
So do you get big variation in your videos when you go for a topic that seems everyone is worried about, aging maybe, but a topic that other people aren't? You know, does it vary on topic, or is it on what you do?
Does what vary?
The number of views that you get.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and you can tell, you kind of have a sense of like which videos you think are really applicable to a lot of people, and some, you know, are just gonna have that kind of like viral stick or viral capacity because they're a little bit funny, a little bit quirky, or they're just sort of that everyday question that people, you know, you're like, yeah, what is the answer to that question? I've always wondered.
One example was which came first, the chicken or the egg? That's one of our most successful videos, and I found. I guess it came out of the blue a bit for us. What I was doing is in the class when I was showing certain people, they would say, oh, click that one, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So some of the time, it's not necessarily what you think is going to be the most successful. But that's sort of like a universal question that has done really well. So that was a good example of one I thought that
Awesome. So for our final two panelists, well, our final video panelist, we'll turn to Destin.
So my inspiration for making science videos, I'm a simple guy. I'm a normal guy. I'm an engineer by trade. I have a bachelor's in mechanical and a master's in aero. And so the videos I make, I mean, I'm not descending from some mountain bringing the knowledge to the people. It's me sitting there trying to figure something out. That's all I'm doing. And so I do it in such a way that is fun and interesting and engaging, and I reveal my my ignorance along the way because I start ignorant. And but at the beginning of the video, I have no idea what's going on. At the end, it really is. I mean, I was rubbing on a kangaroo yesterday trying to figure out where the pouch was. I didn't know that stuff. I mean, right?
Did you find out?
Yeah, it was a male kangaroo. They don't have. So yeah, I mean, it's just. I mean, seriously, you said you love the scientific method. You know, I see a kangaroo come up. I'm like, kangaroos have pouches, I'm told. All right, so hypothesis. It's time to collect some data. So that's really all I do. I mean, yeah, there's the answer to your question.
But the interesting thing that you're doing that the other guys are all doing the communication of science, which is absolutely crucial. You're doing your communication via doing science.
Right, yeah. So what I teach my kids, my children, if you ask them, what does Daddy expect of you, they'll tell you, in a world of talkers, be a thinker and a doer. And that's what we try to do in my family. So we, if we see, if we hear somebody asking questions, we don't sit around and talk about it that much. We go figure out how to do it by doing the scientific method. And a lot of times things are outside of our control, but we still do it. And so that's. Yeah, I mean, that's I guess what's a little different about my channel on YouTube or just me on the internet is that I'm doing whatever it is, trying to figure it out.
I guess the interesting thing about that is it kind of marks something that really normal people couldn't do 20, 30, 40 years ago. I mean, maybe on TV you could, but scientists were separated. Scientists worked in labs and they published their science via a paper and that's it. Whereas what you can do is showing this process live. You're showing going from the ignorance through to knowing more about what's going on, and that's crucial to science.
Right. Yeah. And I say ignorance, but I probably operate at a little higher level than that to begin with. So what I do is a lot of times I'll read just an incredible amount of information. I know you guys do the same thing. What do you say? You probably go 2 or 3 levels deeper than what you show in the video, just researching and reading papers and stuff. And it's that revelation process. And there is a moment, what makes a video good, in my opinion, is the moment where you say, aha, I didn't know that, now I do, and this is why, and it's totally different than what I thought. But yeah, it's, I forgot the question, but I hope I gave you a sufficient answer.
I don't know, but I'm going to go with an Einstein quote there. If you don't understand it well enough to communicate it, then you don't understand it.
Right. And so that's what we try to do. Now, people have been asking me how I communicate this stuff, and I'll tell everybody. So I started a very slow, easy level, and I'm talking to literally my children or my grandmother. And so I start at that level, and then I slowly ramp the video up, or ramp the intelligence level of the video up. And then toward the end, I start to go up really high, so smart people like PhDs can understand. And then I hit that spike, and then I bottom out real fast. So if by doing that, then you have something that everybody understands and everybody enjoys, because they walk away feeling that they've liberated themselves of ignorance to some degree.
Do the kids drop out when it gets to the PhD spike, or?
No, they don't. And it's because this sounds silly, but it's true. I'm from Alabama in the States. That's it's a region of America where everybody makes fun of us for being dumb, and we embrace that.
I'm from Queensland.
You're from Queensland. So yeah, I don't know a lot about Australian culture, but I know I'm a bogan. Is that correct? Is this correct? So yeah, so people identify with me because they hear me speak and they say, pretty nice guy, probably an idiot. There's nothing he can say. There's nothing this guy can say that's going to be over my intelligence level. And so when people go into the video thinking that, they usually make it through the whole ride with me, and we learn together. That's pretty much it.
Tricking people into learning.
Maybe.
No, it's something that I'd advocate as well. Yeah. Our final panelist, Chris Casella from Science Alert, needs a microphone. Chris, we don't have your Facebook feed up here. We've got a giant logo.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your process for communicating science and what you do.
Science Alert was initially started as a website that was all about promoting Australian science. As a student at CPAS with Will and all the folks there, I realized that science is dominated in the news by the United States, the UK, and all the larger countries, and that Australia was being underrepresented. And so I made it a goal to get all the Australian science, bring it in one place, made a website, and would put it there to make it easily accessible for everybody. Well, the first thing you do when you have a website is you want to drive traffic. And so over the years, we did everything we could to drive the traffic, but the only one thing that did drive the traffic really hard to Science Alert was when Facebook came on board and provided these business pages. And so immediately we created a business page with the goal of driving traffic to the website. So it was all about Australian science. And what we found is that it didn't drive that much website traffic, but there was huge engagement happening on Facebook. And at that moment, I decided, and I recognized that Facebook was the place where people actually want to engage with the science. They don't actually necessarily want to go all the way down into the paper, though they like to have that link. And so how Science Alert began was all about promoting Australian science, and we started doing it on Facebook and realized, oh my gosh, people are commenting, liking, and sharing these stories more than they ever did on the website. But we also found out that they wanted more science, and this is before another Facebook page showed up. And we recognized that people really do want science. They just want it in a short, concise, tight way. And we asked them, do you want more science? Because science, we were putting out maybe 4 to 6 stories a day. And that's all about Australia puts out on a regular basis. So it's nice that as a small country, it was very manageable. But the people wanted more. And so I went looking for more types of content to share. Hence, all these people sitting here. So Science Alert is really an Australian science promotion, getting the information out there. But it's also, the other part is the kind of the enthusiast part of me, the science, the part of me that fucking loves science and sharing that with people.
I guess, well, from there, I'm actually going to start asking questions to all of you, really, because I think you're starting to hit on these points that a lot of people in the science communication world are thinking about. Are you pushing news or are you pushing entertainment? Are you entertainers or educators? How would you all think of yourselves there? Oh, don't give me the good answer straight away.
Well, actually, I started as trying to be the information source, and slowly realized that I put up a single text quote or something, and everyone engaged with it. And one time I put a little joke, and everyone engaged with it. And then someone came. So
you came to this through a process of actual experimentation.
Just trying it and going, gosh, that works. And then someone comes along and makes a picture with a quote on it, and a little meme or something, or the science cat. And I went, wow, look at that.
You scientist, you.
And what I kind of see it as is it's kind of like your dinner. You have the wholesome foods, and that's the science news in my perspective. But you got to give them the dessert too. You give them those things that lead in, the little piece of candy afterwards, and I think Elise has probably shown that more than anybody. Where I drove it from science to entertainment, so 20% maybe is entertainment. She started by engaging people with the fun stuff, and then started sneaking in the science, and I think that's just brilliant.
Kind of like hiding vegetables and good stuff.
I would say, I think it's important to not, the two aren't mutually exclusive. Being entertaining and being educating, in fact, it's probably a lot more powerful to entertain someone and educate them at the same time. And that goes back to relating it into their lives and finding that thing that makes them laugh or makes them engaged. And I think that is that dichotomy, especially with science, is that it's so serious on one end and it's so stringent and rigid and it has a method. But we want to be entertained, and so there's a big gap between people who are laymen and don't indulge every day in science, and people who are scientists, and hopefully we are the people that can bridge that gap and make it accessible. But I don't think that it has to be, it can only be educational or it can only be entertainment.
I'd like to say that I don't try to be entertaining or educational or anything. I just try to share how enthusiastic I am or how awesome I think something is about the universe. It's really, for me, it's about looking at the world around us and the fact that we can understand it. And isn't it amazing that we can understand these things? And if you can take somebody there, I think that the science itself is entertaining. And that doesn't have to be one or the other. And it doesn't have to be, I'm trying to teach you something. It has to be, I'm trying to help you, like I'm trying to bring you to a place where you think this thing is amazing, and you get, you're along, as Desmond was saying, you're along for the ride, and we get something out of it.
Would you say, I thought that was a really interesting distinction. I'm not trying to teach you something. You would actually, if you felt that your videos were teaching rather than trying to help people understand, that sort of distinction there, bringing people along for the journey.
Yeah. I mean, I think the distinction is really important. We talk a lot about teachers, but I think it's much more about learning. And learning and teaching are two very different things. And to facilitate learning, you don't necessarily have to set out to teach a certain thing. You just have to kind of enable people to open their minds in a certain way, and people will learn things, maybe not what you wanted them to learn, but they will learn something. And maybe they'll learn something that you didn't even know. So I think that's a very important distinction. So the best way I can think of doing that is just to talk about what gets me excited and why I want to learn, and then hope that rubs off on other people.
Phil, is there something that you would say in terms of the split between communicating the science that you're working on and making it too entertaining, or?
Well, it's a superposition of states, right? It's Schrodinger's choice, I suppose.
Schrodinger's science blog.
Yeah. My problem is I'm hugely biased. I love science so much that it's all entertaining to me. So everything that comes along is like, oh, that's so cool. And you also don't want to do that every time because people will get tired of that. So it's an interesting problem to make something fresh and exciting and to make people see it the way I do every time. And I get people saying, you're over the top. And it's like, no, I'm being me. This is how I am. I may be over the top, but that's just the way I am. So I don't necessarily, I'm not going into this saying, well, this will be entertaining and this will be really funny. It's unless I'm actually posting a joke, which does happen, and then it falls like an anchor off a cliff, typically. But it's like what Henry was saying. I just want to show my passion for this stuff, and I figure when I'm reading something, if I'm seeing the passion that this person is writing it with, or is putting in the camera, or drawing, or whatever, that passion shines through. It's the old idea that I would listen to that person read a laundry list. It really is true. It's if the person is honest and truthful, passionate, and in love with what they're doing, that shines through. And that's how I feel about all this stuff, and that's I just let it go.
Is that something that is kind of new to the whole new media circuit of homemade videos and blogging and Facebook and things like that people can show more of their own personality and their own passion?
Bill Nye the Science Guy. So no, it's not new.
Okay.
And Bill only goes back, 20 years? And Dr. K here in Australia has been doing it for a long time. You can go way back to the old Mr. Wizard things, and Billy, put your finger on this cathode and anode. Let's see what happens. Those are, woo, science. That's been going on forever. And people we've been telling stories about Archimedes for 2,000 years, and these crazy scientists doing their wacky stuff. Making it entertaining, making it fun, showing the passion, doing all that's been around. And there are going to be cycles. When Carl Sagan was doing this and he was shunned by the real scientists, that was a crime. But he paved the way for the modern public outreach person, the new science communicator, to come out and do all this. And even now, it can be, pardon the expression given the video we saw, it can be poo-pooed by the establishment when you try to make a splash. And there's a tension involved. I can probably, it's true, but in a lot of cases, I don't care. I don't care what other people, if they don't like what I'm doing, they don't have to watch what I'm doing. There are video channels and everything else. There are 100 other people writing about it. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and hopefully, it's like you said. When I'm writing this stuff, what I'm thinking is, I don't just want to regurgitate the stuff. What I want to do is take my hand. I want to show you something. That to me is how it starts.
I think that's a really interesting point that I'd actually like to hear from a lot of you. How do you deal with the people who don't like what you did, the critics, the people who might have liked a lot of your work, but then you might have got some part wrong, or you missed out one of those crucial details. You didn't tell X fact about X. How do you deal with for want of a better word, trolls?
Well, Henry actually did an entire video on this, so maybe you should answer.
I don't know. I mean, the internet is a mean and cruel place. And and for the same reason that it's an awesome place, is that people get to say things freely, and I think that's. I just want to like go back to what Phil was saying, is like, and when the question you asked about why is this a new thing, and Bill Nye the Science Guy was around well before the internet, or before the internet became used by anybody other than scientists. But I think the point is that today it's available that anybody can kind of go and, if they're passionate about something, they can talk about it and they can share their feelings and their thoughts. And so that's what we're doing. But it's also, there are people who will share their feelings about our work. And I did a video that came across to most of the people who watched it as, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it. Basically, that people thought I was kind of talking down, and I was talking about some math that was kind of a, late. It was simple math, what people think of as like elementary school math, and the video was intending to basically. My thought about it was a really cool, really neat, little clever way of understanding why this basic math worked. I wasn't trying to teach the basic math. I assumed everybody already knew that. And then I was saying, isn't this a cool way of understanding why that basic thing that you see every day but you never think about why it works, why it actually works. But a huge number of people, that watched the video thought that I was just trying to teach this boring thing, and they assumed that because they already knew it, that I was being mean, and it was very funny because they were unhappy that I was teaching them something that they already knew. So at some level, you just say, I'm sorry.
You actually said I'm sorry?
In this case, I did make another video that I said I'm sorry that, because I had a very different intention, but clearly I missed on the execution. And so I said I'm sorry about that. I did not intend to insult people. But at the same time, it is what it is. You move on, and the next week, if I had just made another video the next week, probably no one would have noticed. Because most of the people who are, the thing you have to realize is that commenters on any internet thing, even if you get 10,000 comments, maybe you have 500,000 or a million views on it. That's a tiny fraction of the people who watch it. It's a vocal minority. And so they're not at all representative of the feelings of the people who watch the video.
And the crazies are the loudest.
Yeah, the crazy people are the loudest ones. It's as in politics, the most extreme people on either side are the loudest and the most annoying. But they do have a capacity to make you feel upset and vulnerable, because you read these things and we are human, and you react to them, and you can rationalize and say, oh yeah, this is only like 3 people, but 3 people can make you feel horrible at the same time. So it is a tricky thing to play, and I have it lucky because most of the time that doesn't happen. And also, I don't know if Elise wants to talk to this, but this is a huge issue. It's a much bigger issue for any women who have a public face as a woman on the internet, whether in science or not, but particularly in YouTube and science things. Like all the women that I know who do this kind of work get harassed and heckled far more just because they're women. So I don't know if you want to talk
Elise?
about that.
Yeah, it's not fun. I don't know. I never really had to deal with a lot of that for a long time, because it was always I fucking love science. It was never me. And then I got Twitter, and I linked to the Twitter on the Facebook page, and the world went crazy. There were about 10,000 comments, all going mad about the fact that I was a woman, and then a bunch of articles came out and newspaper things, and a lot of it was there was nothing you would immediately identify as horrible, but there was a lot of kind of creepy comments and kind of sexualized comments that on their own wouldn't be that bad, but when there are 10,000 of them all in one place, it becomes incredibly disturbing. And I think a lot of people in general don't realize that what they're saying is inappropriate. And I always kind of think, if you wouldn't walk up to someone and say it in the street, then don't say it to them on the internet. I think, you talk about harassment, all this kind of stuff. If you were to say this to one of these people, it wouldn't even occur to them. They think they're complimenting you. They don't understand why saying these things could be considered bad, but it really makes you very uncomfortable. And it does put women off of doing things like this, which sucks.
We have in this panel, look at this. I mean, exactly. Here, we don't have as many women involved here.
We need more girls. And I always remember when I first started doing this, thinking, there's no women, there's no female popularizers. Where are they? The media must have a bias. Where are they? There are so many great female scientists. Why aren't they in the media? Why aren't they communicating? And then all that happened, and I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe it's not that the media doesn't want women. Maybe it's the women are trying it and thinking nah, fuck that. Sorry, I don't want to do this. This is not fun.
It's a downer.
It is. It's a major downer. It's a major downer. Sorry.
But it's true. I mean, look,
It
it's the
sucks.
flip side of having this open world where you all can come from nowhere and a friend can suggest you should have a Facebook site, and a year later you've got 6 million people who like your stuff. I mean, aside, actually do and want to see more of it. And there's going to be that flip side,
Yeah, absolutely. But as Henry was saying, you do notice the negative comments a lot more, and you do have to sort of remind yourself. I have so many million subscribers. There are all these people that love what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. But you need like 100 positive comments to balance all the negative ones.
You do need to develop a very thick skin. And I don't know about you guys, but it's not necessarily the negative comments that upset me as much as it is they're just plain ignorant, or the people that don't even try to understand. Like the Schrodinger's cat video, if you go through the comments on that, I guarantee you will find at least 10 people who don't understand that it's a thought experiment and think that you're actually torturing cats. I guarantee it.
stick figure cats.
Seriously, I guarantee it. If anyone wants to go through that, I would put down money that there are at least 10 people who think that. Because I've had that happen. I'll talk about Schrodinger's cat and people are like, oh my god, this is so cruel, you're killing cats. It's not a real cat.
You should. One of the best Twitter feeds is called "Don't Read the Comments."
Yes, avoid the comments.
That's
Yeah.
if you have, and it basically over and over, it's all it says: "Don't read the comments."
Yeah.
And it says it in different ways, but honestly,
Yeah, just
it's
don't
pretty
do
good
it.
advice.
And especially every time you post about anything even vaguely controversial, if it's climate change or GM food,
Really?
evolution.
Really?
Okay.
I remember I linked to one of yours on climate change once, and I remember tweeting you just saying, just don't read the comments, just don't do it. Just don't look.
There's a great article that a friend and I wrote once where we called, we're talking about something different, but we had one paragraph where we talked about people rejecting the evidence on climate change and vaccination and GM and a few other things, and all of them came out. All of it, and they were annoyed that they couldn't even dominate the comments thread because they all wanted to dominate and ruin the comments thread.
Anti-vaxxers are a special kind of crazy.
Look, I mean,
I really want to write something someday about how an anti-vax or somebody who didn't get their vaccinations was abducted by aliens, and that's how they faked the moon landings, and as well as making and resetting all the thermometers.
Climate change,
they're
yeah,
faking
yeah.
the climate change. Yeah, and just see what happens. Just throw that nuclear weapon out on the web.
Science is not always in the easiest place in the landscape, but these people are at the forefront of getting science in front of our eyeballs, the forefront of showing what we can do to communicate science. And hopefully the world is a better place because of that. So please, massive round of applause for our panel tonight.